Hello, Star Trek fans. Welcome to ReBingeit. This is the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And my name's Attiba.
And we are rebinging Star Trek Voyager from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're on Season 1, Episode 16, Learning Curve. This episode aired May 22nd, 1995. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about, I want to say last week's podcast, but for us it was last month. It's been an entire month since we recorded. But that episode was Jatrell. Anything to say about Jatrell?
No, it was perfect.
It was not a bad episode. This was the one, Attiba, if you don't remember, where somebody came out of Neelix's past and he had been the guy who he'd been the Oppenheimer who destroyed his moon and killed all of his family, and he was also Odo's dad from Deep Space Nine.
I do remember this episode, and Neelix he's just a menace. He's
nothing but trouble.
He's still a little traumatized by the whole thing.
Understandably. I did literally start watching Oppenheimer right in the middle of watching that episode, so they seemed similar. Well, as you probably guessed, our frequent guest host, Attiba Royster from our Deep Space Nine podcast, has joined us for the first time for Voyager, so welcome, Attiba.
Yeah.
Glad to have me. It is strange to not be talking DS9, but
it's a little
I'm sure
strange.
I'll get over that.
I think we've only ever talked about, we did Wrath of Khan together, and we talked about Deep Space Nine, and we've had some debates about Discovery, but I don't think we've spent any time discussing Voyager.
No, and probably for good reason. Voyager is probably, I don't know, it's on the lower end of series for me, but I still enjoy a number of episodes. This one I neither enjoy nor dislike. I just think it's very illustrative of what I think are some issues with Voyager.
Oh.
Okay, yes. I was going to ask you why you elected this one, but we do cover a lot of ground in this episode, that's true. And we sort of wrap up some of the big things that we started at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Well, anything to say before we start, I guess anything else to say? We were all just at WonderCon last week where James took 10,000 pictures. How did WonderCon go for everyone?
It was a great show for me.
Yeah?
I was in Artist Alley. I'm usually in Artist Alley. I'll actually have a table at Comic-Con as well.
Yay!
Any of the fine listeners will be there. You can look out for me. I don't know the numbers yet. We don't have that information yet, but I'll be sure to let everyone know once I have that. And yeah, so there was a premiere for Star Trek Discovery, which actually, when's the actual premiere? It's this week.
It was last week. We already saw the first two episodes were released.
Got it.
Even though we rarely skip Star Trek anything when we go to a con, but we did skip that in favor of Resident Alien. And the only reason we did that is because the episodes were premiering in a few days. So we didn't think it was like that big of a deal to see it in advance. But then we were annoyed because our favorite character, the actress, was not there.
Yeah.
She was actually sick, so she wasn't there. But that was still a pretty good panel. So we had a good time. Yeah.
The highlight for me was getting to meet and chat with 4 cast members of the film Aliens. So,
we did see one. We did not see 4. Who else did you see?
Rico Ross was there. Paul Reiser was there.
Oh.
Jeanette Goldstein was there, and I forget Drake's actual name. Something Rylance. I'm probably.
Oh yes, yeah. He was on the.
Wow.
He was like 2 tables up from Vasquez.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we only saw Vasquez.
Yeah. I believe Kim actually said, see, Vasquez does live.
I did. I don't think I've ever seen her in person before. I was surprised. I don't usually go to the floor at the regular Comic-Con because it's just like swimming upstream. I can't deal with all the people, but it's not as bad at WonderCon. So I did spend a fair amount of time on the floor.
Yeah, you were on the floor a lot.
Yeah. All right, well, we probably should stop catching up here and get on with the episode.
Yes.
So, James, you have the notes this week, so
I do.
Over to you.
Okay. We open on Janeway in the holodeck, playing that Victorian nanny novel she seems to like. For some reason, Janeway seems to want to immerse herself in an archaic class-based society with snotty children. And I assume it's that weird thing of when you're far enough away from that time period, it seems kind of quaint.
I mean, I would like to say that this is somebody else's impression of what women want, but we did meet that one woman author at WonderCon a couple of years ago. This is exactly what she wanted. She wanted to be part of this world. So, yeah. I mean, I can't argue. It seems to be a thing. I don't personally understand it. Plus, these children are terrible. They're snooty, and the little boy is speaking Latin, and I think he might be a demon. I was starting to wonder if maybe this was actually a holo program for a horror movie, and we just hadn't got to the scary part yet, because that kid is scary.
Well, they're members of the aristocracy, so what do you expect?
I don't think you're wrong about that, Kim. I swear that kid has been in a horror movie in some capacity. I just couldn't place him.
I'm going to look it up now. Carry on.
We do get a little bit of a hint that this story seems to involve some supernatural element, perhaps even a ghost story.
True.
Well, suddenly the holographic children disappear. And I assume this is because the died of cholera protocol kicked in like a chapter early.
Oh.
But no, it's because of a power distribution problem. Tuvok goes to investigate and finds crewman Dolby replacing a failing gel pack, but he's not following protocol and informing B'Elanna in engineering. We learn that Dolby is a former Maquis, and they didn't have protocols. He tells Tuvok, on our ship, when something goes wrong, we just fixed it. So I think this goes a little bit towards explaining how the Maquis all got slaughtered. Because I could see this clown downing your entire infrastructure during a battle because he wanted to upgrade the firmware on the routers.
I mean, I think that the Jemadar might have had something to do with it too, but all I can say is, apparently being a member of the Maquis is remarkably like working in nonprofit. That's all I can say.
I was thinking it from an IT approach of the guys who just decide it's a good idea to down a server in production because...
Oh, yeah. I've worked with those people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I've worked with the people who they were just trying to, in double quotes, clean up. And so they needed to move a cable. So they just unplugged something in the middle of the day and then just, moved a cable and then plugged it back. It was like, no big deal. I just unplugged it for a second. It's like, oh my God, he just crashed everything. Yeah, that would be this guy. When he first steps out of the wall, he almost seems pleasant. But then he turns very quickly to being just nasty.
Oh. Well, yeah. Tuvok may not have made the right approach to Dolby. He points out he's no longer on a Maquis ship. And Dolby just tells him he's aware of that and regrets it every day.
Mm. Well, there's a lot to be said about Tuvok's approach to the Maquis in this episode, which we will get to.
And into the opening credits with a very grumpy-looking Tuvok. Kim, analysis here.
Well, I think it's almost like it's too soon to answer that question because Tuvok doesn't yet know what he's getting into. This is maybe his first interaction with Dolby.
Yeah.
And maybe Dolby also doesn't quite know what he's doing. He clearly hasn't had enough instruction. So, I think it's a little early to say, should we have done something differently here on both sides? I mean, the answer is yes, but we're just stepping into the unknown right now.
Okay. Back from the credits, and Janeway is giving a log, explaining how the loss of a gel pack is reminding them of the precarious nature of their journey. Janeway, Tuvok, and Chakotay are having a conference and trying to figure out how this pack failed. Tuvok tells Janeway they only have 47 packs in reserve. And it's always worrying when they give a definitive number, because someone somewhere will be counting, and then we'll post a 30-page dissertation around Season 6 on how they've actually replaced 87 of them.
Does anybody find it strange that the Starfleet engineers decided we're just going to go ahead and on this ship just base every single critical system on this brand new technology?
Yeah.
Trust me, it'll work.
Yeah, well, and Janeway says something like that, right? These things never break. Okay.
Right.
Except guess what? They do. I've heard that before.
Failing gel packs apparently are an even bigger problem as they cannot replicate them. So Janeway approves a plan to switch over systems to standard isolinear circuits, which is probably a good idea because at least, if you replace some of the gel pack systems, you would have more spare then.
Yeah.
But before they wrap up, Tuvok brings up crewman Dolby's unauthorized repairs and describes him as having lost control, going so far as insubordination. And I assume any kind of emotion when on duty would fall under losing control.
Oh, definitely.
He got emotional. He was utterly out of control.
Yeah, he'll be talking about this on his podcast.
Oh, right. Yes. Did we ever settle on a name for that?
People have suggested Security Officer's Log is the name of his podcast.
I really think the name of the podcast should be Tuvox, VOX.
Oh, nice.
Janeway now details how she's already heard complaints about Dobby. I just called him Dobby.
I know.
He's not an elf
every time, and I'm like, this is gonna happen.
Dolby, and Tuvok goes on to detail how he's tampered with ship systems and even missed duty assignments. And this I thought was funny because have you considered addressing this earlier if it's already got up to the captain level?
Yeah, he's tampering with the ship systems. He's out, I think, 30% of the time, right? He's missed like 30% of his shifts. Yeah. I mean, I think we can fire this guy.
So question here is the traditional Starfleet approach to these kind of problems just transfer crew members to other ships?
Or other departments, like it happens at companies?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think we run into this problem where we have people in leadership who just don't know how to be leaders, right?
Yeah.
Leilani is brand new to leadership. They made a real point of that at the beginning. Right. Does she know how to manage this kind of a problem? Or is she just accepting that, oh yeah, this worked on the Maquis ship, so it's okay?
Interesting.
We wouldn't expect her to accept it because we know that deep in her heart, Starfleet was all she ever wanted to do. So is she just lacking experience or what else is going on here?
A lot of that stuff would have gotten, taken care of in the academy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's the whole problem that we have here.
Chakotay's brilliant insight into Dolby is he's frustrated at Starfleet protocol and procedure.
I like when Janeway says, like, any idea what might be bothering him? Yeah, Starfleet is what's bothering him. Here's the answer to your question.
Well, it turns out there are also other Maquis who've been having problems adjusting. And Janeway does recognize that you can't expect Starfleet behavior from people who never went to Starfleet Academy, which is good, but have they thought about proactively doing something about this?
16 episodes in, we've had this realization.
Yeah. Her plan is a crash course in Starfleet operations, volunteering Tuvok for the job, as he was formerly an instructor at Starfleet Academy.
Chakotay was annoyingly smug at the end of the scene. I think that's what it said in the script. Chakotay looks smug.
Well, Janeway she gets Chakotay to pick out crew members who will benefit from this training. My thought here is, could this be a bad idea? If you've just picked out all the whiners and complainers and put them in one team, aren't you just asking for a disaster? Now you've created the alpha team of concentrated malcontents.
Well, that's true. And that's probably not a wise thing to do. But again, to get back to Kim's point about how does it even get to this level, I think one of the duties of the first officer, as I understand it, is to oversee personnel and make sure stuff like this doesn't. He's essentially the HR of the ship. So
I don't think he's the HR, but he's certainly supposed to be the leader of all of the people, and the crew is his responsibility. And we've had this discussion before where it's like, come on, Chakotay, what are you doing about it? This is actually your problem to fix. But instead he's just like, oh, nobody treats my Maquis people fairly. People ask me all the time why I don't like Chakotay. I mean, come on. The guy's he's an adult. What is he doing?
Off we go to a cargo bay, and F Troop has assembled, and they're already whining about why they're there. Unfortunately, Tuvok does not help by jumping straight in with Starfleet cadet-style training.
Yes. Here's the first real leadership problem, okay? He's walked in here with a plan, not taking into account the people that he was dealing with, right? And he has just gone right to the rigidity and the rule of law instead of, like, maybe if you had even explained to the group that, hey, Chakotay nominated you for this. I didn't pick you. It's not a punishment. If you don't like the reason that you're here, you can take that up with Commander Chakotay. I'm just here to provide instruction. But he didn't do that. He gave no context. He just immediately jumped in and started criticizing, which that's just not the way to win any respect.
Why wouldn't Chakotay be there for the initial to say, hey guys, there's been some issues. Tuvok here is going to help us sort them out.
Yeah.
Peace. Like, just that would have been fine. Like,
because he's terrible.
He's not. Well, I want to listen. I want to come to I feel bad for Chakotay just because he's probably one of the most poorly written characters in all of Star Trek. But there's nothing I can say. You're 100% right in this instance.
Amongst F Troop is also a young Bajoran guy who really doesn't seem to want to be there. Eventually, Dolby spells it out. They feel this situation is insulting and they didn't ask to be there. They're doing the best job they can, but they're being told that's just not good enough. One of the women of the group, who's called Henley, tells Dolby I don't have anything to learn from him, meaning Tuvok, and they all head for the exit. Tuvok orders them to stay, which doesn't work at all, and they just leave, including Chell, who's a Bolian, who Tuvok had ordered to run laps.
He didn't even make one lap. He was already about ready to collapse.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think that worked as well as planned.
No. In Tuvok's defense, the headband the woman was wearing was ridiculous. Is she in high school? I mean, come on.
I think maybe that's what they were trying to aim at, that these people were very indisciplined.
Yeah.
I think they missed with the young guy, whose name we find out is Garen. I think they were trying to make him seem like he was, a teenager, like really young. But the actor was sort of too old for that role.
Or at least looked too old.
The dude is clearly 30 years old.
Yeah. I also wish we'd get a little background on these people.
Yeah.
Like, did they have any experience in the military? Did they just jump out of whatever jobs they were doing and they ended up on a Maquis ship? Because do they even have any experience at all in working on teams? It's funny that we would just expect them to all of a sudden not only follow Starfleet protocol, but understand it, care about it, want to follow it. Yeah. But we just get nothing, and it makes it look like they're bad people, but they're not bad people. They were just dumped into a situation that they don't fit in, and now someone is yelling at them and criticizing them.
They signed up for one thing and ended up in something completely different.
Right.
In the mess hall, F Troop is discussing how nothing's going to happen, and in comes Chakotay, who immediately performs the Riker maneuver, if you notice.
My notes say that exact thing. Chakotay does a Riker on the chair.
He asks their opinion of what happened. Dobby tells them they'll do their jobs, but there's a Starfleet way and there's the Maquis way, and they want to do things the Maquis way, as it's always worked for them. Well, Chakotay nods at this, then just slugs Dolby, knocking him to the floor. As everyone in the mess looks on stunned, Chakotay says, well, that's the Maquis way. And he's fine doing that every day until you report to Tuvok. So I guess that's the management style they're used to, if they're pirates?
Yeah, but what are we doing now? I mean, it's from one extreme to the other. Tuvok isn't handling this correctly. I'm pretty sure Chakotay's not handling this correctly either, because now we've just threatened violence? That's the answer to this problem?
Okay, I will defend Chakotay here.
Right.
Oy.
Because I think he's demonstrating this is how they did discipline on the Maquis ship.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but he did it in front of Starfleet personnel. That's the mistake.
True. Well, I think the Starfleet personnel maybe could learn something about dealing with the Maquis.
Yes, well, that's what's happened. That's what they've seen now. They say, oh, this is how we deal with it. All right, I'll just punch the next guy who irritates me. There's so much bad leadership in this episode. I mean, that's embarrassing.
Maybe not the ideal approach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Back in the cargo bay, and Tuvok is doing an inspection of F Troop. And of course, they're not up to dress code standards. I think we should bring up that he gets the young Bajoran, Garen, to remove his earring.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have seen in TNG, Ensign Ro wore her Bajoran earring.
And so did Kira during her commission with Starfleet.
Yes.
That's a mistake, I think.
I believe Picard expressly permitted it on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
He didn't like it, but he allowed Ro to do it. I still
Mm-hmm.
don't know if it was written into the Starfleet dress code that it was okay.
Probably because the Bajorans weren't yet part of the Federation, right?
Right, and wouldn't be until after DS9.
But I think we've learned maybe since these shows aired that there's a better way to handle such things.
Right.
So it feels quite offensive looking back.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, don't forget that Voyager's playing with a pre-Dominion War playbook, so...
That's true.
I don't know about that.
Time is confusing.
In engineering, Dolby is complaining to B'Elanna about the training. And B'Elanna actually seems to take quite a good approach here. Basically turning it on him and saying he's afraid he won't make it, that he'll fail.
Okay, I disagree.
Oh.
Number one, first of all, B'Elanna Torres is giving the advice here? Didn't she punch a guy?
Yes, she did. In episode 2, she broke somebody's nose, Lieutenant Carey.
Yes, but at heart, B'Elanna has always wanted to be Starfleet.
Yes, what we've learned since then. And also, this is after the episode where she gets separated from her Klingon side for a while. And so I think she's had a real sort of, understanding of her own psyche. But at least what she does here is, it's almost a childish tactic.
Yeah. Totally a childish tactic.
But he's acting like a child. And so, it was sort of like child meets child in this conversation. She was almost just mocking him, right? Instead of saying, hey, you have to do it, or what's the matter with you, or trying to take a really strong arm approach. She just took more of a jokey approach. a Miles O'Brien approach, I would say.
Well, she's served with him. Maybe she knows this is an approach that will work.
Maybe.
If she knows him well enough.
That's a possibility. I would just like to point out that just because there's something that annoys me that I don't want to do doesn't mean that I'll be bad at it. Doesn't mean that I'm afraid to do it. Doesn't mean that I don't think I'll be successful at it. It just means it annoys me and I don't want to do it.
Oh, yeah. There's plenty of things I don't want to do every day that I am pretty good at doing.
The complaining is cut short by an alarm as another power failure has occurred and another gel pack has failed. B'Elanna is now worried they're having some kind of cascade failure. And in the scene, B'Elanna actually holds up a gel pack, and it looks like a small bag of compost with metal connectors at the top. In sickbay, B'Elanna has brought a gel pack to the doctor, asking him to look at the biological component. They do a scan, and the doctor is just perfect here, referring to the gel pack as a patient.
Doesn't he also ask it how it is today?
Yes, he even says, "Don't worry, my little friend."
It's too bad Janeway wasn't there to roll her eyes. That would have been great.
I'm thinking about this. Do you think the doctor is being totally condescending here? I mean, he is, but like even more so because he resents the fact that he has to have a bedside manner.
Probably.
Oh,
I'll show you my bedside manner.
I took it a little differently. Kes has been trying to show him how he could have a better bedside manner.
Yeah.
He's probably looked up in a book, because he likes to read books, looked at how doctors are supposed to behave. He thinks, oh, if doctors behave in this way, then if I go one step further, I'll be even better. So he's kind of being over the top. He's not doing it maliciously. He's just accidentally hamming it up.
I think he's being sarcastic.
Judging by what happens with the doctor later, I can see him hamming it up. Yes.
Yeah. And he is pretty sarcastic, even up until this point.
Unfortunately, the doctor finds the gel packs have an infection, a very contagious one. It's not harmful to humanoids, but it will affect the gel packs. The doctor cautions, unless they find the source of the infection, he can't stop it from spreading.
I did, for just a moment in watching this episode the first time, think maybe crewman Dalby was infected with something, and that's why he was so cranky. Like he had some kind of crabby virus.
And then you'd have to get rid of the Maquis because they're all infected.
That would be a better episode, I think. I want to see that one.
Beam Dalby onto some M-class planet and just leave him there.
Oh.
Tuvok is back with F Troop and taking them for a 10-kilometer run. However, they're going to start in the mess hall, which involves climbing through 50 Jeffries tubes just to get to the starting point. And we go into a montage of people climbing ladders, eventually ending up in the mess hall, where the actual run starts. This now gives us a chance for a lot of Star Trek Chariots of Fire scenes, with lots of sweaty-looking people running.
Except for Tuvok.
Oh,
it
yes.
Looks effortless for.
He tells the unfortunate members of F Troop that he also increased the gravity on the deck by 10%, stating that you must be prepared because you never know what conditions you might encounter. And then even more fun, tells them they'll repeat the same exercise tomorrow, and he expects their performance to be better.
I would just like to raise a point here. Vulcans are supposed to be stronger and have more stamina than humans or most humanoid races.
Yes.
So it seems like it's a little bit unfair for Tuvok to expect them.
It's a little cruel,
Yeah.
especially with no warning.
Off to the transporter room, where Harry is telling B'Elanna they've gone through the logs and found no indication of a bacteria in the transport. B'Elanna mentions a planet called Napine, where they brought on board food stores for Neelix, but everything checked out fine. During this whole scene, the Bolian, Chell, has been working on the transporter and explains to B'Elanna that Tuvok ordered him to degauss the transporter pads with a micro-resonator. She says that'll take hours, and Chell tells her, Mr. Tuvok estimated 26.3 hours. So, humiliation is obviously an important part of Starfleet training.
Yeah, I wondered what the point of this was. Was he being punished for something? I mean, if we're really trying to teach them something, is that the right thing
Yes,
to do?
humiliation is a well-known technique for instilling good discipline.
That's
Sure.
the central issue of the whole episode.
I mean, we could have done all of this in the holodeck. We didn't need to do it in front of other people. I think you're right. We really were just trying to humiliate. I've had to do quite a bit of management training, like give management training, and there is a whole section about humiliation and why it's a bad thing to do.
Right. This is not the Marine Corps of the 1960s.
Right.
You're not trying to break them.
Yes, that is accurate. Like, they're basically conscripts, right? So
Yeah.
why would you not adjust your approach or something. I don't, yeah.
I'm picturing Tuvok watching Full Metal Jacket and going, that is an excellent training regime.
No, Tuvok, he has one way, and it's always worked, and he says that later, right? And it's always worked.
Yeah.
And this is the way I'm going to do it.
I think Tuvok watched Full Metal Jacket and said, oh, Hartman went easy on those guys.
Oh, nice. Tuvok is now recording a log detailing how he's arranged a bridge training exercise on the holodeck with F-Troop. It starts off well, and they get a distress call from a badly damaged Ferengi ship. Despite Chell warning it could possibly be a trap, Dolby orders intercept course. And we all know what the correct response to this scenario is, if you remember, Kim.
Oh, from Star Trek Prodigy? When Dal goes, anybody know anyone on that ship? When everybody says no, he's like, all right, just leave it. That's how you beat the Kobayashi Maru. That was so funny. I do think, though, this is the best thing we've done so far. Now you can actually do something that makes sense, something that's realistic, and you can talk about things that you could get better at rather than just criticizing how they look, what sort of condition they're in. We can actually do something.
Right. This does seem like a better way of training them. Back in the simulation, soon as they set off, a Romulan warbird decloaks and begins firing. As they return fire, a second ship decloaks and also starts firing.
It's always Romulans.
Oh, yeah. It's going badly, they're getting plastered, and Dolby orders Henley to keep firing, do as much damage as you can, and the shields buckle. Well, Tuvok's had enough and orders the computer, reset program, describing their first command together as not successful. You're all dead.
Tuvok, what a jerk. Okay.
I mean, he could have helped, right? This is how you learn.
Exactly.
No. Or you could have started with something a little simpler. Nope, we're going to kill y'all.
Don't start with the boss fight. You gotta...
Yeah.
And they were working together just fine.
That's right. You work towards the boss.
Until, all hell breaks loose. They were calling out. They were doing everything you're supposed to do on the bridge. Are we trying to assess them for command abilities? Like, what is this testing? Like, you want to see if they work well together? They do, unless you throw two Romulan warbirds at them and so that they're super outgunned, and like most people would like not function great in that scenario.
I wish to humiliate them further.
Seriously.
I think it's a really good idea for team building, but Tuvok should have been a part of it.
Yeah.
And it should have started simpler, and they could have worked towards it.
Dolby whines that this was a no-win situation, and Chell defensively says, I certainly did everything I possibly could do. My evasive action sequences cannot be faulted. And I immediately thought, Chell is that guy.
He's that guy. It was my favorite part of the whole episode, really, was him saying, I mean, clearly this was not my fault. I did everything I could have done.
I did kind of like that.
Me too. Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny.
Tuvok asks Garen if he had anything to add. I assume the point here was that Garen was supposed to be a stroppy teenager, because he just replies, what does it matter? Tuvok makes a very good point, though, that if you do not learn from your mistakes, you will be doomed to repeat them, which I think is some kind of strange Vulcan thing, as humans seem to revel in trying to repeat them as many times as possible.
And how many times have we talked about our lack of retrospectives after these failed missions?
Yes.
And we make the same mistake again.
Dolby tells Tuvok he should take the blame. He was in command. He did everything he could. They were just outgunned. Tuvok explains, did the possibility of a retreat not occur to you? This, I guess, is an alien concept to the Maquis, as they all seem surprised by this idea, which I think was odd because we already know the Maquis used hit-and-run tactics with the Cardassians. They didn't go in for these full-on fight-to-the-death battles.
I would suggest that the fact that they are unwilling to surrender is probably based on the fact that they were fighting Cardassians. Because as we well know, Cardassians are not known for being the greatest humanitarians when it comes to prisoners of war. So maybe they were like, I am not surrendering under any circumstances.
Oh, that's a good point. That could point towards, again, Tuvok's lack of experience maybe with the Cardassians.
But also maybe they were used to dealing with smaller, underpowered ships, and running away wasn't going to do anything. So if they got into this kind of a fight, they all knew they were just sacrificing themselves to take out as many as they could. So yeah, again, not taking into account the actual training or experience that the people had, and just criticizing them for not knowing how to be Starfleet.
Interesting. Tuvok tries explaining to them that going out with phasers firing may seem heroic, but in the long term, it's merely foolish. Retreat is often the best option. again, I think that would be really good advice for the Maquis. You don't have a huge fleet. Better to run away and fight later than get plastered heroically and die.
Yeah, but you're discounting the coolness factor of going out guns blazing.
Okay.
It's the Snodgrass approach.
Oh, Snodgrass just wanted his musical ending.
Well, and he got it.
This lesson doesn't sit well with the others. Dolby telling Tuvok he's proved his point again. They're not Starfleet material. Now in the mess hall, Tuvok is sitting alone, and Neelix comes over to offer his support as the morale officer, telling Tuvok all the changes to his usual routine mean he's got something on his mind. Plus, he describes them as giving off a cloud of doom. I really liked how Tuvok seemed so unconvinced that Neelix was able to interpret his mood. Again, it's that Vulcan thing of they like to try and hide their feelings, but perhaps you can actually see them. Tim Ross, I think, really fulfilled the Vulcan role here of the sort of the irritation and the, I don't have emotions, I'm not crabby. Yeah, yes, you are.
Yeah, well, the Vulcans would say they don't have moods, right?
Right.
Oh, exactly.
But he made it clear that something was not right because he sat in a different chair, was behaving differently from how he normally behaves. Yeah.
Right. Tuvok explains to Neelix how he's finding it difficult to train these cadets, telling him he's trained thousands of cadets and has never encountered these difficulties before. It's not a huge logical leap to realize that these people don't want to be there.
They're unwilling participants. It's completely different, which is why it's funny when he says his methods are sound. It's like your methods are sound with an exact particular demographic that these people do not fall into.
Neelix shows Tuvok some flowers, telling them there's a stem to this plant which is rigid and easily breaks. Tuvok naturally takes this, thinking Neelix is referring to the Maquis crew. Neelix has to explain he's talking about Tuvok, who's rigid and inflexible. Finally, of all people, it's Neelix who's the one who explains they're not Starfleet cadets, and you cannot treat them the same way. He suggests actually trying to get to know them. As Neelix is delivering this unwanted advice, he's holding a plate of goop, which kind of looks like Stilton, I thought, and describes it as brill cheese. Tuvok makes note, you must cultivate bacteria to make cheese. And then we follow this dramatic shot as they both look up at the air vents in the galley and into an ad break.
I was reminded of the dramatic shot from Outbreak when we go up into the air vents.
Yeah, but I don't know. On a starship, really, we don't have any filtration.
Well, okay. I was going to make this point earlier, but first, let's talk about the transporter's biofilter. Now, so apparently it only filters stuff that it knows about?
Yes.
Like, what's the point of that? Aren't we going out?
It should only allow in things it knows.
Exactly. I want that biofilter, like the most suspicious guard anywhere. Like, what's this? What is that? I don't know what that is. You're not coming in.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how it should work. Before we delve into this thing about the bacteria getting up into the vents, there's the conversation between Neelix and Tuvok where when Neelix is telling him that he should get to know the people, right?
Yeah.
And Tuvok says something like, I'm not sure I have the ability to find out what they're like inside. He says something like that. But it's not so much about trying to make friends with them. And this is the mistake he's going to make because he's now I need to get to know them. It's not that. It's about find out what drives them and what motivates them. It's a completely different thing, but it's a huge part of how you convince people who aren't already motivated, right? It's a huge part of how you convince them to sort of get on the bandwagon with you. Nobody is telling Tuvok this. Where is he getting that from? Yeah. He's never had to motivate people before because everybody in Starfleet so far in the Roddenberry verse was self-motivated.
Oh, yeah.
Now, hold on a second. I'm just remembering something now. Wasn't Tuvok undercover with this exact Maquis crew for like months?
Yes, he was.
That's a great point. So how does he not know this at all?
Well, maybe he only interacted with a small number of the Maquis.
It was a tiny ship, remember?
True.
I think Attiba makes a great point. I guess it's possible that he wasn't interacting with this exact crew for the whole time he was undercover, but you have to headcanon your way there.
Well, he should at least be aware of how the Maquis operate and what their modus operandi is. Like, it shouldn't be like this crazy to him that it's like, oh, well, these guys are just like, I can't reach these guys at all. Well, then, like, how are you ever able to infiltrate,
He should have spent months watching Chakotay.
Oh, so you're saying that he should have this solid background of experience of how the Maquis operates because of the time he spent on the ship?
Yeah, something.
Huh.
Or at least they should have addressed it. The fact that they didn't even bring it up.
I'm going to wave my hand at that.
Okay. Back to the cheese.
Back to a log from Janeway, and B'Elanna is investigating Neelix's kitchen. She has the Brill cheese isolated in a containment field because apparently it's full of volatile bacteria spores.
This kitchen already had a low rating. Remember a couple episodes ago where Neelix was licking his fingers while he was cooking? And I was like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah. It did make me laugh, though, a cheese in a containment field.
Yes.
B'Elanna and Tuvok have determined the spores must have traveled through the ventilation system throughout the ship, infecting all the bioneural circuitry. Now, if the vents from the kitchen spread over all the ship without any kind of filtering, wouldn't the whole place smell like goopy Stilton cheese?
Yeah, I was thinking that too. How could it not smell?
Yeah. Neelix starts cooking something with cumin, and Kim has to abandon the ship.
That might explain Dolby's attitude, actually.
Maybe I was right. It actually did get to him. He's like, man, this place stinks.
This whole ship smells like cheese. Neelix is very apologetic about this, and there's another power fluctuation. B'Elanna reassures him it's not his fault.
But it's 1,000% his fault.
And then she delivers one of the great Voyager lines, "Get the cheese to sickbay." How can you read that and keep a straight face?
That's pretty funny.
On the holodeck, Tom's dive bar program is running, and Tuvok is attempting to bond with Dalby by playing pool.
Because he has no creativity.
This is a complete failure. Dalby is not interested in getting to know Tuvok. Dalby gives some of his background. He had a troubled early life on the Bajoran frontier, and how his partner was brutally murdered by the Cardassians. He joined the Maquis to slaughter as many Cardassians as he could find, and we do learn a little of the young Bajoran Garen. Dalby describes him as looking like himself at that age. Tuvok also explains that the intention of the experience of the program was to be positive for everyone. Dalby isn't buying it, finally saying, "I don't want to get to know you, and I don't want to be your friend." I think this falls under utter failure.
I'd like to give some leadership advice at this point in time.
Go.
If we had started with this piece of information, like, yes, Chakotay nominated you specifically, and our intention of this experience is for it to be positive, it could have changed the entire thing.
Right.
But that's not what we did. And here we are. I did like, though, that Tuvok sort of stumbled into trying to solve the problem by this. By, let's go to Tom Paris's thing. Tom Paris says this is fun, so this is what I'll do. He takes the guy there, and then he has no idea what to do once he gets there. I thought it was good that we made a mistake first before we sort of fixed the problem. Although we do fix the problem accidentally, but that's beside the point. We tried something, and it didn't work.
In sickbay, the Doctor is amazed at the bacteria. It's attacked every cell in the gel pack's biological matrix. And Kes reports it's also resistant to all known antibacterial agents. The Doctor is so upbeat here. It's weird.
Yes.
The power fluctuations are getting worse, and the Doctor reports he's at a loss. Kes does suggest a virus inside the bacteria, and the two of them figure it out. Kes suggests using an antiviral agent on the gel packs. In the cargo bay, Tuvok dismisses F-Troop as the inertial dampeners are now starting to malfunction. But the doors won't open, and now they're trapped in there. On the bridge, Harry reports gel packs are failing faster than they can cope. Every system is going down, and most worryingly, life support. Quick cut back to the cargo bay. All the lights are flashing, just so you know that something's going wrong. And even the manual override of the doors isn't working.
Okay.
What? You're going to bring up the same thing I am, aren't you?
Okay, go ahead then.
Why would a manual override not work?
Okay.
Because it's not really manual. It's still a digital thing, apparently.
I was going to say, giving the writers the benefit of the doubt, I was going to say, okay, maybe because this is the cargo bay, the computer is programmed to know if there's any problems with the structural integrity or force field system and say, we can't open the cargo bay doors because I can't, if anything happens, I don't want to decomp the ship.
Yeah.
So maybe, but then what happens later discounts that entire idea. So.
I think you're on a good path there. I think you can headcanon your way out of this one.
I definitely think that's a weakness in the story. And it's also sort of a weakness that once you started losing the gel packs, why you wouldn't have immediately deployed a team to only focus on getting the alternate method of things running, the isolinear circuitry.
Isolinear, yeah.
Right, to the life support. It really doesn't make any sense that we wouldn't have reacted in that way. As soon as you recognize it's not just one failing, now you have a problem. Everybody should have been focused on, hey, we have to make sure that we have life support.
Right.
Yeah.
But apparently it was more important to have a valuable engineer running a 10K.
Yeah, there's some issues with this whole story, no doubt.
On the bridge, life support is now starting to fail, but the doctor calls with the plan. They can fight the virus by raising the temperature of the gel packs. B'Elanna comes up with a plan to use the ship's warp field to heat the ship. It's a risky maneuver, but Janeway is willing to try it.
Of course she is.
Delivering a classic Janeway, do it.
Do it.
Taking the risk is always Janeway's number one plan. And we get a great effects shot here of the nacelles moving up into their warp position, but it doesn't jump to warp. I love any space shots of Voyager. In the cargo bay, an open conduit is starting to get very hot. F Troop is a little concerned by this, and Tuvok orders Garen to climb up to the control room and try and open the doors. On the bridge, it's starting to warm up, and they're all looking a little sweaty. Everything's shaking, but they're still not up to temperature. Tom manages to get some more power from the engines, and Janeway orders B'Elanna to initiate the plasma burst. In the cargo bay, F Troop has opened a panel to a Jeffries tube just as the plasma conduit explodes, and Tuvok reports the gas will become toxic within minutes. Well, considering this is a plasma, so it's like superheated, it's pretty toxic from the get-go.
And now we have to spend 10 minutes arguing about it as well.
We can't get into the mechanics of how plasma and transfer works. Like, it's fine, whatever.
Whatever the technobabble is, we accept it. Yeah.
Tuvok orders the rest of them to leave, and Dalby asks, what about Garen? We can't leave him behind. And we cut to Garen passed out on a railing in the control room above them. Tuvok again tells them to go, as he can't risk losing any more of them, delivering the classic, it's always tactically correct to sacrifice the few for the many. So Vulcan. Dalby isn't having it and tries to go back, but Tuvok gets him in an arm lock, saying he will break his arm if he does not follow his orders, and pushes Dalby into the Jeffries tube. Tuvok then closes the panel and goes back for Garen.
There's so many things going wrong. If we hadn't spent 5 minutes arguing, we probably would have been able to get the kid and get out of there. So if the guy had just followed orders, it would have been fine.
Yeah.
But also Tuvok could have said, get out, I'll save him. He could have done that too. But instead, he didn't. So I put that on Tuvok.
Well, I think Tuvok threatening to break his arm was a good Maquis management tactic.
I'm fine with that. We just should have done it quicker.
On the bridge, dripping with sweat, Janeway calls the doctor and asks, please, I'm begging you, put on the air conditioning.
Because it said something like 188 degrees Fahrenheit or something in there. Oh my God, that looked hot.
But for real, the doctor calls and reports the bacteria levels are dropping and they can purge the system in a few minutes. The doctor is so hilariously cheery here. Again, he's like so upbeat.
Yeah, he's fine. He's great.
Well, sure, he's not hot.
Everyone else looks like they're suffering from heat stroke, but the doctor's like, oh, this is all good. In the cargo bay, a coughing Tuvok has rescued Garen, but as he's climbing down the ladder, he falls off, and he's down. On the bridge, everyone seems barely conscious, and the doctor calls to inform them that the infectious bacteria have all been destroyed, still in the most upbeat mood. His delivery is so out of place, and everyone else just looks terrible.
He may be cherry because he's saving the day.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, he likes to be the hero.
He's got a taste for it after Heroes and Demons.
Yep, that was it. Oh, Cass was the funniest.
This is funny here, because it literally looks like somebody just threw a bucket of water over her.
Yeah, she is a drowned rat in this scene, and she's looking at him like she's going to murder him.
Yes. Back in the cargo bay, F Troop are actually working together to force the doors open.
Yeah.
And they fight through the smoke to pull Garen and Tuvok out. Delby tells Tuvok, I thought Starfleet rules said that was an unacceptable risk. Tuvok replies, I recently realized that there are times when it is desirable to bend the rules. Delby tells him, if you can learn to bend the rules, I guess we can learn to follow them. And he helps Tuvok to sickbay. And we close on the iconic Voyager flyby. The end.
That's it? That's it?
And if we hadn't had that last line from Dolby, I think this would have been a much better episode. It's like, you don't have to, you just spent an hour teaching me this lesson. You don't have to then turn around and tell me what the lesson was. That makes me crazy.
Oh, that was the lesson. I had no idea that was
Actually, you just spent an hour failing to teach me this lesson.
Oh.
So now, this comment makes absolutely no sense.
Oh, yeah.
I think we've had this problem before with some of the Voyager episodes where they've sort of thrown everything else out the window just to get to this one thing that they wanted to get to. Like in the episode Faces with the guys from the Phage and Bailana, where she's two people in this episode. She's the human and she's the Klingon.
Oh, gosh, that ending,
right?
yes.
And at the end of that, we just flew away and left all these people who are being held prisoner. We never mentioned it again. And it's like, oh, because that's not what the story was about. The story was about Bailana having this personal crisis. And it's kind of similar here. It's like the B story of the gel packs is the interesting story. But we're so focused on this other thing that wasn't told very well that we end up with this kind of goofy ending.
Right.
Because you think, really? What about everything else that was happening? Nope, we're done.
And they all lived happily ever after. That sort of ending, you know?
Where's the cheese? I think what they should have ended was showing the cheese in space, that they had beamed it out.
They vented the cheese, yes.
Yes. There's your cheese, Neelix.
Oh.
All right, we've reached the end of the episode and already started complaining, but do we have overanalysis?
Oh my God, do we?
Well, I have a couple of things for the overanalysis, but I have one point first. I would have paid money for them to have a holodeck scene with Arlie Emery as a drill instructor giving Tuvok advice.
I think instead he should have just talked to his own captain and said,
maybe.
Got some problems with this. Maybe you could help me out. No, he goes to sit in the mess hall and waits for Neelix to tell him about leadership. I mean, come on.
Any Maquis officers? Anybody? Gotta give me an inkling here? No.
Yeah, Chakotay. Well, although, I mean, he saw Chakotay in action on the ship. Maybe he's like, well, that didn't work.
No, we'll just wait for the guy with the cheese to weigh in.
Cheese guy.
Cheese guy saved the day. He caused the problem and he saved the day.
Okay, on to overanalysis. The gel packs. They're not easily replaceable and they can't replicate them. So for me, this raises a few questions. The first thing is, I assume Voyager is not designed for long-distance exploration.
Yeah.
It has critical systems you can't repair without external help or resupply. So sending it off for a long-distance journey is, not a great idea.
And what was the benefit of the gel packs? What was even the point? Do we know?
Well, they were supposed to be much more resistant to damage because they could reroute themselves automatically. They could form new connections. I think they talked about that in the first episode.
Right, and they're supposed to be faster than isolinear chips.
I see.
But also, let's remember, Voyager was never meant to be on a long-haul voyage.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this was an accident, yeah. But we're going to have to start working on some vaccines.
Because that leads to a couple of other things. Is Voyager really kind of a technology demonstrator, more of an advanced prototype?
I feel like
with things like gel packs.
I think it is supposed to be on the very vanguard of Federation technology.
Yeah.
But also, I want to talk about why apparently it's fine to use gel packs for life support, but when it comes to the holographic doctor, that's all got to be totally isolated from. I mean, it might make sense because the doctor's systems were kind of built separately and not really meant to integrate entirely with the rest of the ship, but I did find it weird that this affected the Doctor not at all.
Well, we've had those conversations about how they couldn't take power from the holodecks because it wasn't compatible.
Yeah.
So maybe, he's mixed in with that somehow. But he has to be incorporated into the ship because in the episode one of the episodes where they almost got back to the Alpha Quadrant.
Oh, with the Romulan.
Yeah. He said that he couldn't leave the ship because he's so integrated with it, just not with the gel packs.
Oh, okay. I have a theory here.
Yeah.
I also have a theory, yes.
The Doctor module is like one of those plug-in,
Right.
like a plug-in unit.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. They're off the shelf. You plug them in anywhere. They have their own power supply. They're independent.
Yeah, but then you could have beamed that across.
Maybe, but maybe it's like one of my files when I do design stuff where I'll have a bunch of stuff on the USB drive, but also saving things onto the drive itself, onto the computer itself, so that if I pull the USB drive, I won't have access to everything that I need for that design file.
Yeah.
You've built a Doctor.
So the basic unit is there, but the other pieces of information could be in the computer, could be in the computer core, all over. Gotcha. Next point. So how did the bacteria for the cheese culture get onto the ship?
They beamed it on.
And the filters didn't pick it up because it didn't know what it was?
Didn't recognize it.
Hence Attiba's point of you should be the stuff you don't know about should be the problem.
Did he just develop it? Is there a way to develop it when you're making cheese?
Oh, maybe the Doppler replicated something.
Yeah, but if something spoils, it grows bacteria, right?
But there's particular types you need for cheese.
Yeah, he may have replicated something.
We've got the doctor to make it for him. Okay. Next thing, you could install some kind of monitoring on the ship's ventilation system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just like basic filters or something.
Now you have to surround this biohazard of a restaurant.
Yeah.
With a force field of some kind.
Oh, some like containment field.
Mm-hmm.
Like you go through a decontamination procedure going in.
Yes.
I'm guessing that's probably what was implemented forward.
After this, yeah.
So the little sign on Neelix's door for his restaurant is now down to a Z rating.
Yeah, it's at the bottom now. It was already low. It was already a C. And now it's the bottom.
Minus F. Next thing, looking at Starfleet. So you must have problem crew members generally. I mean, if they're just people. So do you think they just weed them out by the time you'd get to a ship like Voyager? Like most of the problem crew would be assigned to either, duties on a planet or pushed out to a space station in the middle of nowhere, like we saw on Prodigy. So your problem crew or officers, whoever, would not be on a ship like Voyager.
Well, remember Roddenberry's vision originally was that there just wouldn't be any descent in the ranks, right?
Yeah.
It's just that the trouble is it's too boring to tell stories like that. But the people who made this show, they believed in that vision.
Also, there is an episode down the line which handles a similar topic in a much better way. And they do say something to the effect of, normally if an officer's a problem, they'll get transferred or do something, but we haven't been able to do that here, so.
Yeah. Or you would get some counseling, right? Or something, yeah. Because realistically, you could just be in the wrong job. Not every job works for every person. And so you would need sometimes a different leader or a different location. Or if you were having relationship problems, especially in a situation like this where there's only a limited number of people you could have relationships with. I mean, sometimes change is just necessary and will improve how people are behaving.
Yeah, I was going to point out that maybe it's a bad fit, like Kate Pulaski on the Enterprise.
I always liked Pulaski. Maybe because there's a few episodes in that she's really good, or that the episodes are really good that she's in.
But she still refused to call Data by his proper name, so...
Data. That's funny.
And my final point is I would talk about Tuvok's training, but I'm sure Kim has a lot to bring up on that one.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in Janeway's Leadership Corner. So, Attiba, do you have any over-analysis?
Not really over-analysis, more overarching points about where the series is. And my issue is I think one of the main failings, especially in the first season of Voyager, is I think the conflict or the tension between the two crews was supposed to kind of be more of a narrative device during the first season. And it seemed very much like everybody was like, okay, we're gonna merge these two crews by all the Maquis crew doing exactly what the Starfleet crew tell them to do, instead of, maybe showing how those negotiations are happening and using that as an opportunity to really show that they're out here alone and they're struggling and all this. I guess it was more important to them to go with the family dynamic, which actually works a lot better once another character is introduced that kind of is the focus of that. The other thing is this episode totally feels like a Next Generation cast-off. I think if you insert Data for Tuvok, this whole story makes a lot more sense. And it also makes a lot more sense why there's no advice solicited from any of the Maquis officers.
That's an interesting observation. Because one of the things I wondered about was why there wasn't any kind of training plan put in place by Maquis and Starfleet officers.
It feels like this was just an episode that was maybe not even a full episode, maybe just a concept of like Data trains the recruits.
It should have been the B story is the problem, and it wasn't. It was the A story.
Right.
As a B story, it could be a real throwaway of Tuvok just coming to terms with Maquis individuals who are a problem. And it could almost be a, haha, we're all friends at the end.
But again, as we pointed out, like this this episode seems to forget major points of Tuvok's own personal history, which would have been interesting to call back to in this situation.
Yeah.
The result of this being a Next Generation story initially at some point.
There was such an interesting thing that they did by putting the Maquis crew into this crew, forcing that to happen, and then there was no way out, and that they had to live together. But then they just really carefully, I guess, picked their moments to deal with it, when in reality it would have come up every day. It would have been a problem, a big problem in the beginning, but we only really had one episode early on where it was a problem, and then we kind of moved on, and then it came up again, and then we moved on. But I just think the moving on part is what we wouldn't have done on a serialized show. We would have had to have dealt with it more. But in episodic, you can't do that. You just have to, it's either part of the show all the time, the basic part of the narrative, or you do this, which is we have these little pockets of standalone episodes. It would have been served differently by the writers of Deep Space Nine, I imagine.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the thing. This show was setting itself apart from Deep Space Nine with those long arcs.
Yeah.
And it was going back to that classic TOS, TNG, we start with the problem, we raise it up to a crescendo, and then in the last 5 minutes we fix it.
And the ship is fine.
And it will never be talked about again.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of the issues that people have with Voyager is that you ramp up to a crescendo, and then often the solution is a bunch of tech babble that like doesn't make any sense, and then they save the day.
Which is why it's like TNG.
Yeah.
Even TNG, like later TNG, yes, but I would say like the mid part, like the best parts of TNG in the middle there, the middle seasons, was really clear about making sure that solutions to things were grounded in like common sense, and then using a dressing of technobabble to make it seem futuristic.
Well, because just like any long-running show, once they figured out the characters, the show became about the characters.
Right.
And we don't have that yet here. We're still stumbling along a little bit.
Right.
We tried to do something different by having the Maquis forced into it, but we're not doing anything really different.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, here's a question. Do you think the characters on this show are better developed by the end of season 1, even though there's significantly less episodes, compared to Deep Space Nine at the end of its season?
By the end of season 1 of Deep Space Nine, those characters were still a mess.
Yeah,
we still didn't know who everybody was. The actors didn't know who they were. It was this is no better or worse. This is very similar.
I would argue that the Doctor gets fleshed out a lot.
Yeah.
He's kind of the breakout star of season 1 of Voyager. And maybe Tom Paris. I don't know. Tom Paris's character.
Tom hasn't had a lot to do.
I know.
In the beginning, yes, in a few episodes, but not really. It's been more Harry. We've seen more Harry than we have Tom.
Yeah. Right. But Harry kind of stays the same this whole season, whereas Tom Paris kind of starts off with this guy with a chip on his shoulder and like not really liking Chakotay and that whole tension. I mean, that might just be...
but by the end, but where he is at the end of the pilot is pretty much where he is at the end of the season.
That's true.
I don't think he from the very beginning of the pilot to the end of the season, yes, he's changed, but it all happened in that first episode.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that anybody really evolved, apart from, I think Kes changed a fair amount, and the hologram, the Doctor, as they developed him more. But otherwise, I don't think there's been too much development. A little bit with Bailana. Maybe she's the one who's changed the most, who's not a hologram. But that too started like in episode 2, and then we just kind of got to where we are now. The other thing that's sort of funny to me with the Maquis is we didn't train them. We just sort of dumped them into the crew, and then we other them with their pips. They don't have the same pips as the Starfleet crew. So it's like, we want you to be exactly like Starfleet, but we're going to point out that you're not by making you wear something that's different. I don't know. I think we made a lot of mistakes in trying to integrate these people into the Starfleet crew.
Right. And it's fine. I think it would make for a more interesting show to to show kind of that we made mistakes and how we corrected them rather than saying...
I agree. I wish we had talked about it a lot. I wish we had, you know, even early on, if we'd had a whole episode about integrating them in instead of just picking one person and talking about her integration, because that sort of left everybody else behind. It could have made some really good stories, and there could have been a lot of dark stuff that we did in season 1. But like, I've had people complain to me, we get a lot more emails, a lot more interaction about Voyager than we did about Deep Space Nine, probably because there were, I guess, more viewers for it. But I also get a lot more complaints of people telling me all the things that are wrong with it. It's like, you know, mostly it's people are upset about the scarcity thing, where we should have been running out of resources, we should have been starving, we should have been all this. And I've said it many times on this podcast, and I'm going to keep saying it. That's not the show they're making. They didn't want to make that show. And so it's just simply not about that. I think they confused themselves by infusing the Maquis because it's such a great opportunity. And they've just like sprinkled it in instead of really taking that seriously, because that could have made for a much better show. But they didn't want to make a dark show.
Right.
It gets dark later, right towards the end. But that's not what they wanted to do in the beginning.
As you said so eloquently at WonderCon, if that's what you want, watch Battlestar Galactica.
That is what I said. If that's what you're looking for, you're watching the wrong show. Go watch Battlestar Galactica, which was a great show.
It was.
My only thing, I wanted to go back to the beginning where we were talking about the actor playing the kid and what he was in, and I have big news. First of all, he was in The Young and the Restless. This is very important because we talk about how frequently Young and the Restless people end up on Star Trek.
Yeah. Which one was he? Was he the young or
He would have been the young because he was Philip Chancellor IV, which meant he played a kid. But anyway, that's not what's really important. Then he played Picard's kid, it says, in Star Trek Generations, the movie.
Oh, when they all... Okay.
But more importantly, this is the actor who played John Connor in the Sarah Connor Chronicles on TV.
Oh.
I did not know that. He's been in quite a few things, including some scary movies. So yes, he does, at least as a kid, he had the face for a scary movie.
Oh, funny.
Oh.
All right, so...
Is he the kid that Kramer promises Paul O'Neill will hit 2 home runs for? Probably not.
That would be very funny if that was him. Let me look. Hold on, I got to go way back to the 90s. He was in Seinfeld. I think you might be right. It says he was in 3 episodes. It says Bobby/son. So I don't know if that was the specific one he was in, but he was in Seinfeld, so good call. Anyway, I'll just cover briefly in Janeway's Leadership Corner a couple of things. One of them is that in the end, Tuvok did the thing that needed to be done, which was to show leadership, not tell them about it.
Yeah.
Not tell them what to do. He showed them. The trouble is he almost had to die to do it, and he almost killed the kid to do it as well. But at least we got there eventually.
Yeah.
It's just frustrating that nobody helped him. And that somehow Neelix was the answer is a little bit silly. I do think it's important to say that you don't have to be friends to be a good leader. That's not the point. The point is to figure out what motivates people. That's what helps them move along. That's how you get things out of them, right? Is if you understand what drives them, you can feed that instead of trying to be their pal. It's very hard to be the pal when you're the leader, especially when you have to deliver bad news, right? That's the worst. But I think that's all I would say. Was there something else, James, you wanted to cover about leadership in this section?
I think the only thing I would add is I would find it surprising that Tuvok wouldn't be open to other techniques for dealing with, or wouldn't come to that conclusion on his own.
Yeah, because he's certainly had to deal with people from all different races.
Right.
Yeah.
So it seemed strange that he would be that rigid, especially when Vulcans, they're big into study and understanding other cultures, even if they think they're not terribly good, and emotional races. So wouldn't that temper the way you behaved?
Well, but it's good to remember that everybody he's ever trained before was a willing participant.
Yeah.
Wanted to be in the academy. None of these people want to be there, and he's maybe just not dealt with that. But if he did it for so long, you'd think he would have run into, some crabby teenagers here and there. But it seemed funny that he would be so rigid that he couldn't find his own way to adjusting.
Because that reinforces Attiba's point of, was this supposed to be Data in a TNG story? Because Data wouldn't have the emotional background or the experience to make those changes.
And he probably would have done the same thing when somebody told him that he needed to make friends. He probably would have done that exact same thing.
Right.
Just, let's play pool. Now we're friends.
Yeah.
Because this is how friends behave. All right, let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. Attiba, I'll start with you. What is your rating?
Neutral. This is about par for the course as far as season 1 Voyager goes.
Oh, there's some very good episodes in season 1 and some very neutral episodes.
And some very bad episodes.
I think we only gave one where both of us gave a thumbs down.
Yeah.
It was The Cloud.
Oh.
Yeah.
That episode has some iconic Janeway lines in it. Like, there's coffee in that nebula, but it is terrible.
What happened?
So, yes, thumb enthusiastically in the middle.
All right, James, what's your rating?
This might surprise you. I give it a thumbs up.
Okay.
Because I kind of like Tuvok. I like the way he's written, the way he uses language, and the way he says things. It's a very Vulcan approach. And I like the way the writers managed to remain consistent. And on top of that, Tim Russ being able to actually express emotion without any classical acting cues. And you can see he's able to do it. I think it's a great performance. And that is the one thing that kind of saves it and gives it a thumbs up, along with the Doctor being absolutely hilarious. He's taken this advice from Cass about a better bedside manner, maybe more positive, and has spun it into almost this bizarre, upbeat, everything's going terrible, but I'm going to be happy about it. It just kind of worked. I liked it. It had some humor. The story was very much an encapsulation of episodic Trek, and I'll accept it for that. It shows you the difference very clearly between Deep Space Nine with these long arcs and this darker tone, and Voyager, which they wanted to be another version of TNG, with just, maybe a little bit of conflict to make it more interesting. But it's the nature of the show, and I'm prepared to accept it for that.
Well, I think this is a classic mediocre episode of Star Trek, where it's fine. And it definitely has some funny parts, and there are some good things in it, but there are just some silly things in it. There's some hand waving.
Yeah.
I agree. Tuvok is very good. I think I'm serious that if that line at the end where Dalby just tells me the lesson, if he hadn't said that, it might change my opinion. There were some important things that happened in the episode, but it was okay. Yeah. It's surprising that this is the season ender. Maybe we didn't know we were going to have a season 2 or something, but usually Star Trek goes out with a bang at the end of the season, but this was not a bang. This was a little bit more of a whimper. Interesting.
I don't know the history of it, whether there was questions about it being renewed or if it was hidden in its numbers.
I don't think there were any questions about it being renewed. It kicked off that network, the UPN network, so it was billed as the flagship of that network, so they knew it was coming back.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give my final opinion, which is, watching the first season again, I don't think I've changed my opinion on Voyager. It was a fun show for its time. It led to a great sequel, Prodigy. And I think back in the day, I was very much sold on it. It was a great Trek show. And I remember getting to the end and going, that was good. I'd watch another season of that.
Oh, yeah. This episode doesn't change my opinion of anything. Like I said, it's a classic mediocre episode, meaning I'm used to these kind of episodes within Star Trek. And I definitely liked the characters we've introduced, and I certainly like Janeway so far as a captain.
Yeah.
So, from watching this episode, I would definitely go to season 2. I just missed the big bang at the end of the season is all. And I think we'll get a couple of bangs yet to come.
So this would be one of those TNG episodes when you were showing me like the VHS original episodes of the best ones. And it would be the other episode on the tape.
It was the B-side.
Yeah, where you'd go, oh yeah, that one.
Or you flip the tape over. Oh wait, no, we didn't do that. But this would have been the B episode for sure.
Yeah.
I remember loving Voyager like the whole first season when it was on television. It was must-see TV for me, ran home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were in the same position.
Right.
Same, yeah.
Then, I guess I was just super excited to have a version of Trek on TV that I actually liked, because I didn't like DS9 initially, I think. But as I've come to love DS9, Voyager is kind of like been, especially the first season, has kind of been relegated to it's meh. It's fine. It's fine. But it's not knocking anybody's socks off. Not until later on, at least. And it gets into some stuff. But most of season 1, like you said, Kim is just okay.
But it's still the way that this show is compared to Deep Space Nine has sort of made me appreciate Deep Space Nine less because this is more my comfort zone, this type of show. And I mean, James and I have talked about that a few times.
Yeah.
It's like, I almost feel bad saying it, but that's just reality.
I will say of the classic series, not counting Discovery or Picard or any of those, it's probably the strongest first season overall. It depends on how much. It depends on how much you like Duet, and I really love Duet. So
yeah.
Wow.
Duet, yeah, the best episode of season 1 of Deep Space Nine for sure. There's a couple of really good episodes in the first season of Voyager as well, but there's no Duet.
No.
You know.
But also there's no Move Along Home either. So
I like Move Along Home.
I know you do, James. We're gonna have to have an intervention.
But there's no, what was the one that I hated so much? There were two of them. The Grand Nagus episode of season 1 of Deep Space Nine, and also the Q episode.
Oh,
just absolute nightmares for women.
Oh, yeah, you did not like
just
that one.
Nightmares.
Yeah.
I also like Dramatis Personae, and the season finale of Deep Space Nine was fantastic. I mean, Louise Fletcher's introduction.
Yeah.
Well, this is not a Deep Space Nine podcast.
Unfortunately not, no.
We will keep watching into season 2. We have come to the end of season 1, and we're actually not going to do our traditional season wrap-up for this since we've both watched this show before. So we're just going to pick up with season 2, episode 1. So we are going to take a few weeks off between seasons, so we should be back with season 2 on May 5th.
The 37s. You're going to love it.
I'm excited. So, Attiba, is there anything you need to share with us before you go?
I will be having a horror-themed pop-up market in San Diego at the Handlery Hotel if you're in town, and that will be on May 11th. A lot of horror-themed novelties and spooky stuff for like Halloween and stuff. So if you're in town, you want to check that out, come on down. Also, this whole month I'll be producing a whole batch of artwork based around the Xenomorph, the alien.
Oh.
Because it is Alien Month, so look out for those on my social medias. I'm Attiba K everywhere. So, yeah.
And of course, the podcast.
The Teebs and Kid Phoenix podcast. Yeah, we're on a hiatus, but I think we're planning to do our 25th anniversary look back and a bunch of other things. So
your 25th anniversary?
Well, sorry. We look back at things from that are 25 years old and we assess what impact on the culture, and we just talk about them. So.
Kind of like this podcast. 25 years old.
Oh, man. Like the two members of our book club who both went, oh, yeah, we're born in 1999.
Born in 1997.
That's rude.
What's the matter with you?
That is rude.
Why do I have comic books older than you?
Oh.
All right, so that wraps up season 1 of Voyager, right?
It is.
Come back May 5th as we start season 2. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode of Voyager, you can email us at ReBingeit@gmail.com. You can also connect with us on the socials at ReBingeit. We're on Threads, the thing that used to be called Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're also on YouTube. And you can join the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.
And that's it for me.